亲爱的朋友们，这里是听广播学英语频道。大家都经历过疫情大流行，今天我们来听一篇和口罩有关的故事。N95口罩背后的工业设计师。萨拉·利特尔·特恩布尔是一位工业设计师，他为 N95口罩的研发做出了贡献，尽管 3M 公司对他的作用存在争议。那么，现在就让我们来听一听故事的内容吧。
I'm Katie Hafner, and this is Lost Women of Science from our inbox, a series of mini episodes featuring women in science who came to us from you, our listeners. On today's episode, we hear from designer Paula Reese about her mentor, Sarah Little Turnbull. You might not know Sarah's name, but I'd bet that you've heard of one of her inventions. Plus, in the process of reporting this episode, we discovered that Sarah's story illuminates an issue that we encounter pretty frequently when looking at science history. Producer Johanna Mayer brings us her story.
I want to tell you about this photograph I came across recently. It looks like it was taken sometime in the 1950s or 60s. 4 business people are standing in a circle. 2 of the men are smoking long cigarettes. A third's in a pinstripe suit. And they're all looking down. They're looking at a woman with a killer beehive hairdo, a giant flower pinned to her sweater, and a big, beaming grin.
Sarah Little Turnbull. And she was little.
Sarah was about 4'11". She was born Sarah Finkelstein, but everyone called her Little Sarah. And she made the name her own. Sarah began to go professionally by the name Sarah Little. I'm Johanna Mayer, and this is From Our Inbox, a series from Lost Women of Science. Today, we're talking about Sarah Little Turnbull and the big legacy she left behind, from pot lids to sneakers to a product that many of us became all too familiar with when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the N95 mask. Paula Reese wrote to us about Sarah. Paula is principal of an interdisciplinary design firm, and Sarah was her mentor.
I knew Sarah for 30 years. I can assure you that something in your life today was either designed or inspired by Sarah Little.
Sarah grew up in Brooklyn in the 1920s in a Russian immigrant family. They were poor, but Sarah managed to find beauty and elegant design in unexpected places, like artfully arranged vegetables at the grocer. As a teenager, she won a scholarship to Parsons School of Design, where she studied advertising design. And after graduating, she worked as decor editor of House Beautiful, a popular interior decorating magazine. At the magazine, she promoted ideas that would make us more thoughtful about the way that we use space and consume materials. For example, she wrote articles about the benefits of living with a roommate and organizing small spaces.
She would practice what she preached in that she led a very simple life with fewer things, but of greater quality to last longer.
Sarah lived in a 400 square foot apartment. She had very few clothes, but had them custom made to fit her perfectly.
She really abhorred planned obsolescence and material waste of resources. Her belief was that we should serve as the conscience of the companies that hire us. We need to do the right things.
This was Sarah's guiding philosophy, doing the right thing. And in 1958, she decided to bring her ideas to companies and started her own design consulting business. And with that career leap, Sarah Little Turnbull became a key fixture in the world of applied science and industrial design.
Sarah was an absolute powerhouse and not at all shy about asking for what she needed.
Basically, she was the kind of woman who could hold her own in a circle of businessmen. Big companies began to take notice. Among them, 3M, a giant company that has manufactured everything from masking tape to sandpaper to a synthetic rubber used in space boots. In 1958, they hired Sarah. She worked in the gift wrap and fabric division, but she was not there to wrap gifts. She was there to experiment with a new material 3M was working with, a moldable, non-woven technology.
Her genius was in material science.
Although Sarah didn't have a degree in material science, she'd worked with all kinds of materials, mainly ones that were made from fibers that were woven together, which left these teeny tiny little gaps between the threads. And when she saw this new high-tech fabric, which was made from polymers that were melted together, therefore eliminating those tiny gaps, she knew it was full of potential.
She had a clear understanding of the science behind the things that she was imagining and the things that she wanted to design. And she always started with the question, why?
In fact, when senior management asked Sarah to give a presentation, that's what she called it. Why? In the presentation, Sarah dug into that non-woven technology and all its many potential uses. She came up with 100 original product ideas, including one whose effects would resound across the globe, the moldable bra cup. Instead of an overly rigid and uncomfortable shape, the moldable cup fits snugly to the breast, and with fewer seam lines at that. But according to Paula, that moldable bra cup would pave the way for another invention, one with much farther-reaching effects.
Sarah was way ahead of understanding what was coming. She was so much more influential and accomplished than people know.
While she was working with 3M, Sarah was also taking care of 3 sick family members. Both her parents and her sister were dying, all at the same time, which meant that Sarah spent a lot of time in hospitals. And she began to notice the masks the doctors were wearing, a flat piece of fabric with a tie in the back. Maybe it was the boredom of long hours spent in hospital rooms. Maybe it was a racing brain that just couldn't be tamed. Maybe it was a project designed to distract herself from her own intense grief. We can't say for sure. But Sarah had an idea. What if she could take that moldable bra that she'd designed and turn it into a better medical mask? In 1972, 3M produced a mask, and it looked a whole lot like a moldable bra cup. 3M would tweak the mask over the next few years, but it appeared that Sarah's vision, her product born of a real-life problem, had come to fruition. When the COVID pandemic hit in 2020, news outlets published countless stories about Sarah's contribution to the mask, spotlighting this incredible woman and her work. It seemed that, decades later, Sarah was finally getting long-delayed recognition for her life-saving invention. But here is where the story gets complicated. 3M disputes that Sarah invented the mask. We reached out to 3M to ask about this story, and according to a spokesperson, the company was working on a design for a molded, cup-shaped mask made from non-woven materials as early as 1957, a year before Sarah began working with them. And in 1959, 2 scientists at 3M filed a patent application that included, quote, porous, breath-filtering face masks used by surgeons, physicians, dentists, nurses, and by industrial workers subjected to dusty or contaminated atmospheres. In 2022, a spokesperson from the company also told the Toronto Star that there are notebooks that show that the idea was already churning before Sarah arrived. But Paula says that Sarah is missing credit where credit is due, and that 3M is obscuring her role in the development of the mask. The story of Sarah and the N95 mask illustrates an issue that we encounter a lot in science history. There's often a romantic image of a lone genius who has a breakthrough and suddenly conjures a fresh invention out of thin air. This is known as the great man theory, the idea that extraordinary minds and leaders are born, not made, and that scientific progress is slow and steady, punctuated by giant leaps forward by exceptional men. In reality, these kinds of aha moments are rare. More often, the process of invention is a lot less dramatic, slower, boring almost, convoluted. And crucially, We usually have entire teams of people to thank for breakthroughs, but great man theory rolls off the tongue a whole lot easier than, say, hardworking and collaborative team effort theory. So, regardless of the truth behind the invention of the N95 mask, Sarah's story shows us that science is messy sometimes. Disputes over ideas, over credit, it's all par for the course. But whatever the extent of Sarah Little Turnbull's contribution to the N95, incredibly, the mask was just a footnote in her long career.
Her work was so highly diverse. For instance, she was interested in developing new foodstuffs like soy-based alternatives. She was instrumental on the clear glass cooktop development. She was on the team that worked on the early microwave, and she loved storage systems. She's very, very organized, and so she developed a lot of products around storage.
After a career of more than 70 years, Sarah died in 2015 at age 97. Paula Reese was part of a group of friends who cared for Sarah in her old age. Thinking back to that photo I described earlier, the one with Sarah at the center of the group of men, I wonder how many other women like her are out there.
I've come to believe she was just much too smart to have been acknowledged fully by the madmen of the mid-century. In doing this research, I've connected with other women who have found the same was true of their mentors. And yeah, it's frustrating. Sarah's legacy and her mission was to help the public understand design and to realize we have the ability to make things through wonderful scientific discoveries and technology, but we also have an obligation to make things just because we can.